أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين بالقاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين إلى قيام يوم الدين أما بعد صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. مؤمنين مؤمنات, brothers and sisters in Islam and Iman, Salamun alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So what we decided would be perhaps a bit more practical, a bit more digestible, is if we start all the way from the back of the Quran, right, the shortest surahs in the 30 juz, and we start working backwards from there. And typically those surahs are the ones that we are going to be reciting as the second surahs in our, salah as well. They're usually surahs that most of us have memorized. We teach our kids to memorize them. We don't always teach them the meaning, but at least we get them to memorize it, which is still a good thing regardless. So hopefully in doing this, right, in going through the tafsir of some of these shorter surahs, we gain a lot of information, right? There's a few different, hopefully, objectives. One of them, of course, is that as we are reciting those surahs, either by ourselves, in our salah, wherever we are, hopefully, once we've gone through these tafsir, we can have a bit more of a connection with them, right? Whenever we know the meaning of something and we recite it, there's a much easier way you can build a connection through it that way. Additionally, we're also hoping that through going through these ideas, a bit more of the Islamic history, some basic theological questions that get answered because of the surah get answered for us, inshallah, right? So that's another hope. And then there's going to be a bit of Arabic, obviously, we have to go through as well too, whether it's some grammatical issues, whether it's through sarf and nahu, or just some basic understanding of the meaning of some words. And there are many cases that through the Quran, some of the translations or meanings that we have in mind of certain words in the Quran, we have to kind of retranslate them because there are misconceptions that we have. You know, these individuals that have over time translated these the Quran. You know, it's a point to remember that there isn't a difference necessarily between a translation, a tarjuma, and tafsir, and a commentary or explanation. Because every single translation is itself a tafsir as well too. Any person that says, I'm going to translate the Quran, when they're going through these words, these ayat, these mufradat, these terms that are there, they have to figure out what is the most appropriate term to use over here. They have to have a strong understanding of classical Fusha Arabic. They have to have a good understanding of sarf, of nahu. They have to understand the context of revelation. There's a lot of things there. It doesn't just come from, let me grab an Arabic dictionary, pick the first word and translate it. You don't get a real translation like that. So there is every translation is a low-level version of tafsir as well. And because it is a superficial version of tafsir, there usually is a lot that's left alone. There's a lot that's left. There isn't a full meaning that's given out there. And sometimes an incorrect meaning is given through bad translations as well too. So hopefully through these short sessions that we'll do, hopefully we can correct some of these ideas, inshallah ta'ala. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And originally we were planning on trying to do a surah at night. And to be honest, I think it would be a little unjust to the surah itself to try to compact all the information, even for these short surahs, to try to compact it in 20, 30 minutes is going to be very, very difficult, right? So we will probably have to break them up, and we'll try to at least break them up into two parts, right? And every surah is going to be a bit different. Some of them will be a bit heavier on meaning and require maybe a bit more time. Some of them will be fairly easy. We'll have to see, inshallah. So for example, when we get to Surah Al-Ikhlas, there's no way we can cover that in 20, 30 minutes. That's one of the most in-depth surahs that exist. And many of our Urafa, they specifically have a lot of attention they pay to that surah. But inshallah, if we get tawfiq to get there, then we'll get there inshallah. So, of course, we start all the way from the back. Surah 114, Surah An-Nas. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ مَلِكِ النَّاسِ إِلَهِ النَّاسِ من شر الوسواس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوات على محمد. In a nutshell, this surah is one of the two surahs meant for protection, right? Now, although this is the last surah that's in our compiled Quran, most of us know that it's not the last surah that was actually revealed, right? There's 114 surahs, but it wasn't the 114th to actually be revealed. There is a difference of opinion. There are many ulama who say that no, this surah was one of the earlier ones that was revealed in Makkah. And in terms of the order of revelation, it was the 21st in line. So it came fairly early. And there's a reason why they say that. They say a lot of these shorter surahs, the ones that you don't see ahkam, you don't see a lot of deep meaning. It's just more about basic points, theology, things like that, warning people away from shirk. These things had to deal with Makkah more than Medina. Right? So many of ulama say this was the 21st thing to be revealed. They say after parts of or the whole of Surah Ma'idah to some degree. And again, this was in Makkah. Many other ulama say no. even though it's a shorter one, because of what was being done and because of the reason for why it was revealed, which inshallah, if Allah gives us tawfiq, we'll get to in a few minutes. This is actually a Madani surah. It's revealed in Medina, much, much later on. It's one of the last few surahs. And they say that the two surahs, some believe that this and Surah Falaq, 113, were revealed together. So these were one of the last two surahs to be revealed at the same time, around the 109th and 110th surahs to be revealed. And this is, for example, the opinion of Alama Tabatabai, Qaddasallahu Sirru, and he mentions this in Tafsir al-Mizan, that he believes that this is a surah revealed in Medina. Now, let's talk about the names. We all know it as Surah An-Nas. Now, why Surah An-Nas? Sometimes there are deeper meanings to why the surahs are named the way they're named. Sometimes the way that they're mentioned in riwayat is just because of one of the first words that's used, and it just generally tells you about the theme. Like there's no great explanation. So for example, Surah An-Nas. Okay, right? قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ. Nas is there. It has to do with humans and insan, so they threw it in the names of the surah. That's how many refer to it as. Some say, well, no, it has a reason. The reason is it's because this is giving human beings instructions, and specifically it's instructions on how to seek protection from harm. And specifically from, sihr and black magic and things like that, which inshallah we'll talk about. So that is one reason why some people believe it's called Surah An-Nas. There are technically three other possible names as well, right? There's another one that this surah by itself is called Al-Mu'awwidha, right? Mu'awwidha coming from A'adh. A'adh meaning seeking refuge and protection, right? When we say A'udhu Billah, I seek refuge, I seek protection. So this is also sometimes called the surah of Al-Mu'awwidha, the surah of protection. And Mu'awwidha just means anything that provides protection, right? Very simple. So that's why very famously, as many of you know, because many believe that this surah and Surah Al-Falaq were revealed together, both of them start with Qul A'udhu, right? They are known as the what? Mu'awwidhatain. They're known as, or Mu'awwidhatan, the two surahs of protection, right? Both revealed at the same time, and according to many ulama, for reasons of protecting Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa. Now, on that same line of thinking, there's another technical name that they also offer for this and for Surah Al-Falaq as well, right? It's also known as Surah Al-Muqashqisha or Muqashqisha. Muqashqisha means to cleanse, to purify, to heal something. And it's the same thing. It's very related to protection as well, right? When somebody is sick, you'd say qashqash al-marid, right? That sick person has been healed, they've been purified, right? They're no longer sick. So because this surah offers a protection and a cleansing and a purification from certain types of spiritual illnesses, like sihr and black magic, that's also why it's given this name of al-muqashqisha or muqashqasha. Now because this word has been mentioned in riwayat, right? Some of them actually, there's a difference of opinion that it's also not just called, you have to pay attention now very clearly. Some riwayat call al-muqashqisha, some of them call al-shaqshaqa, right? If you just flip the letters around, right? Just like shaqshaqiyya, Hasan, right? Now, shaqshaqa has nothing to do with cleansing and purifying. Shaqshaqa has to do with, the count sound that a camel makes. It has to do with chirping of birds. It has to do with making sounds and words. And the reason that some ulama say that this surah and Surah Al-Falaq are shaqshiqatan or shaqshiqatain is because both of them have this beauty in the recitation, right? قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ مَلِكِ النَّاسِ إِلَهِ النَّاسِ مِنْ شَرِّ الْوَسْوَاسِ الْخَنَّاسِ. It flows nicely, just like Surah Al-Falaq does as well. That's what some ulama believe. Then there's a discussion, which I don't need to bother you with, but basically, some believe that maybe in the riwayat, they just messed the letters up a little bit. That's why they added this random, shaqshaqa word, when it should have just been qashqasha, right? Shaqshaqa doesn't really make any sense. There are many other surahs which are much more eloquent, which are much more beautiful to recite and to hear. This wasn't really known as that amongst the Arabs. We're not saying that it's not beautiful to recite, but it wasn't really known as that. So it's possible that in the riwayah or among the muhaddithin, somebody just transposed the letters by accident. Maybe that's why. But it's still there, so I thought I'd mention it as well to you, inshallah ta'ala. Now, let's go through some of the riwayat that have been mentioned about this surah. Just a few of them. There's been many, of course, about the benefits, the fada'il. First one comes from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. He's reported to have said, لَقَدْ أُنزِلَتْ عَلَيَّ سُورَتَانِ يعني al-mu'awwidhatayn, that these two surahs, these mu'awwidhatayn that have been revealed to me, مَا أُنزِلَ مِثْلُهُمَا. There has been nothing else like these two that have been revealed to me. Why? What's so special about these two? Inshallah, if we get time tonight, then in a few minutes we'll talk about that. وَإِنَّكَ لَن تَقْرَأَ سُورَتَيْن أَحَبَّ وَلَا أَرْضَى عِنْدَ اللَّهِ مِنْهُمَا. And you will not be able to do qira'ah and recite two surahs more beloved and pleasing to Allah than these two surahs. Right? So there's, inshallah, a lot of fada'il there. Another one about the level of protection that it offers. This one comes from Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa He's reported to have said, "Man qara'aha fi manzilihi kulla layla." So this is specifically about Surah Nas, not necessarily about Falaq, although there might be similar ones about Surah Al-Falaq, which we'll talk about when we reach to that surah. So whoever recites this surah every night in their home, amana min al-jinni wal waswas. They'll have this iman, this protection, this amana from jinn and from any sort of whispers that might take place. Now, waswas obviously is mentioned, right, in this surah, and inshallah, when we get to that part of the tafsir, we'll mention some of the details about what waswas actually means. For now, just call it whispers and evil inclinations. وَمَنْ كَتَبَهَا وَعَلَّقَهَا عَلَى الْأَطْفَالِ الصِّغَارِ. Whoever writes them down and hangs them on, children who are young, what we call ta'weed, right? These amulets that people usually buy or they make themselves, right? Ta'weed is coming from that same word, right? A'udhu billah, a'yadha billah. Ta'weed is the same thing. It's the seeking of protection and refuge. Ta'weed specifically refers to what we normally call these protection amulets or whatever that, or scrolls, whatever you want to call them, right? So the Imam says, whoever writes, this surah down and places it around their young child, حُفِظُوا مِنَ الْجَانِ بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى. They will also be protected from jinn, inshallah. Because obviously, the first part was saying whoever recites it. Obviously, young kids, young babies can't recite it. Okay, so this is another way that they can be protected just from the actual words being written down on paper. And we have, many of the surahs in the Quran which have similar fada'il, that if they're written on deer skin or deer hide and things like this, or it's placed in water, certain benefits come out of there as well too. Right? And these are things that have been mentioned in riwayat. One more thing that I'll mention, because it has to do with Salatul Layl. So most of you know that the last recommended rak'ah for Salatul Layl is Salatul Witr or Watr, right? That odd numbered one rak'ah prayer, the only one rak'ah prayer that we have. So over there, after Surah Fatiha, right, it's recommended that you recite Surah Al-Ikhlas 3 times, and then what? Surah Al-Falaq, and then Surah Al-Nas, right? So over here, we have a hadith about, Salatul Witr from Imam Al-Baqir alayhi salatu wasalam. Man awtara bil mu'awwidhatayn. Whoever recites their Salatul Witr with these mu'awwidhatayn, يعني Al-Falaq and Al-Nas. And also, وَقُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ, right? And also is adding in Surah Al-Ikhlas as well too, which means, like we said, 3 times Surah Ikhlas, then Falaq, then Nas, right? That's typically the way that we do it before we go into the Qunut and Salatul Witr. So whoever recites these, it will be said to him, قِيلَ لَهُ يَا عَبْدَ اللَّهِ, O servant and slave of Allah, أَبْشِرْ, right? There's good news for you, right? Be happy. فَقَدْ قَبِلَ اللَّهُ وِتْرَكَ, because Allah has accepted your witr. Now, it might seem strange, right? Like, okay, but what does this have to do with the surahs? It's perhaps talking about the fact that just the power of these surahs themselves, just because a person has recited them, this is before even they've gone into their qunut, recited, the different istighfar and tawbah and asking for forgiveness from others. Before any of that, according to what we're taking from the zahir of Imam Baqir alayhi salam, is just because of a person reciting these surahs in their Salatul Witr, Allah has accepted it and given him good news already. Right? This is something very, very powerful for us to recite. Okay. Now, we'll give a little bit of background tonight for the revelation, the Sha'n al-Nuzul or Sabab al-Nuzul, and then inshallah we'll continue on tomorrow night as well. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So, what was this surah, or technically both Surah Al-Falaq and Surah Al-Nas? Why were they revealed? What was the reason for revelation? It's a very famous story that is reported both in Shia and Sunni books. Right? They say that there is a Jewish man named Labid ibn A'sam, and he had performed black magic and cast a spell on Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And as a result of him casting that spell, Rasulullah got sick and fell ill. When this happened, Jibreel alayhi salam came down to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He revealed these two surahs, right? These mu'awwidhatayn. He revealed the two surahs to him. He told him, "Hey, this is what happened. This is why you were sick. There was this, man from the Yehudis who recited this, right? Recited a spell on you, and this spell, because the way that I'm not trying to teach you how to do black magic, obviously, but the way it is typically it's spells, black magic is recited on something. You tie those knots, which inshallah we talk about in Surah Al-Falaq, right? Blowing on knots. You tie these knots and you place it somewhere hidden where the person who you're trying to cast the magic on, they can't find it. So Jibreel told them, this person tied knots on something, or they tied these knots, and they threw it in a well somewhere. And this is why you have fallen ill, and this is why I've brought these surahs for you. So Rasulullah then says, okay. He told Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib, alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, go and find this well and go and find that rope or whatever it was, these knots for me. So he went, and there's different things mentioned about what it was. It doesn't really matter, but he found it. So he took it out there and he saw all these, I think there was like 11 knots or something in total that were tied there on this thing. So he went there, he showed to Rasulullah. So then this is what happened. So Rasulullah was beginning to recite both the surahs, the Mu'awwidhatayn, Falaq and Nas, and after every single ayah, Amir al-Mu'mineen would undo and untie one of the knots after the completion of every ayah. So after every ayah was recited by Rasulullah, Imam Ali would undo and untie one of the knots. After each one of those undoings, Rasulullah started to feel a little bit better, started to become healed, until he reached the final one, right, when everything was finished, and then he felt, complete relief and he was done, right? Now, this story, again, Sunnis narrate it, and it's the most famous story, and there are some Shia riwayat which mention the same thing as well too. Now, there's an issue that some of you might be thinking in your mind too, like, hold on. How could Allah send down Insanul Kamil, the most perfect human being, his chosen messenger? How can he be subject to black magic like this? How can somebody, whether Christian, Jew, atheist, anybody, a mushrik, how can he just recite some words or whatever they do for black magic, and how can that affect Rasulullah like that? That doesn't make sense. He should be protected. How could Rasulullah be so easily, affected by this? Wouldn't they have just been able to stop the mission then? Like, couldn't they have just said, made some black magic spell that, na'udhu billah, would have killed Rasulullah? Right? Couldn't they have done something like that? Like, what's going on here? So just for that reason, some of our own ulama, they toss out the story. They say this can't be true. And they bring some evidence from the Quran as well. Right? So they bring in Surah Al-Furqan, Surah 25, ayat 8 through 9. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. أو يلقى إليه كنز أو تكون له جنة يأكل منها وقال الظالمون إن تتبعون إلا رجلا مسحورا. Or how come a treasure presented to them from the heaven? They're asking about why, how. So this is a story about why the mushrikeen, why all the objections that they brought to Rasulullah, like why they didn't want to believe that he was Rasul. How come something special from the heavens wasn't brought to him? Why wasn't a treasure given to him? Or how come he doesn't have a garden that he eats from? Like, why doesn't Allah give him a special garden that he can just eat from? Why does he have to go and plant and buy stuff? Right? So they're asking, why isn't he super special? And at the end, what does Allah say? The zalimun, what do they say? That they're telling Rasulullah, you are just somebody who is mashura. Mashura is coming from sihr, meaning that somebody has cast spells on you. Somebody's just casted magic on you. You are possessed, na'udhu billah, right? There's demons or jinn that have possessed you, and that's all you are. You don't know what you're talking about. Ayah number 9, Unvur kayfa darabu laka al-amthal.
Allah is then saying, look at how they make comparisons of you, Rasulullah. Look at how they think that you're like anybody else that can be possessed or that can do whatever. فَضَلُّوا, right? They have been misguided. They've been strayed. They've deviated. فَلَا يَسْتَطِيعُونَ السَّبِيلَ, and they cannot find a good reason to deny that you are the Rasul. So because of this, many ulama said, look, Allah is denying and rejecting the fact that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam can be mashur, meaning that he can be subjected to sihr and black magic. Okay, that's what it's saying over here. That Allah is saying, why are you trying to think like he's a regular human being, that you guys can be affected by black magic? But no, he can't. He's different. But Allama Tabatabai in Al-Mizan says, I don't accept your evidence. This is possible that he can be affected by black magic, but not in the way that you and I might think. Right, so there's a possible effect of black magic, but how exactly it comes about, inshallah, we'll start with that tomorrow, inshallah. So we'll answer that question. Also for you to think about as well, as we continue on the tafsir. There's about, I think, 200 or so times where in the Quran the word qul is mentioned. Right? Say or speak. What's the point of Allah telling Rasulullah to say qul? Isn't the whole Quran Rasulullah just saying Allah's words or through Jibreel? Like, why does he have to say the word? Tell them that I'm saying it. What's the point? They should all know that it's from Allah. So what's the reason for this word qul? So something for you to think about. And the next point is, over here in these two ayat, we're saying a'udhu, right? And we usually translate it as I seek protection, I seek refuge. There's other words in Arabic that we use, right? Like hifadha or hifd for protection. What's the difference between a'udhu and ahfudh? That I'm seeking refuge, a'udhu, versus ahfudh, or I seek protection or hifd. Is there a difference between the protection, or are they just synonyms? What's the difference between those two, inshallah? And then of course we will explain why nas, insan, is mentioned over and over and over again. Right? Allah's repeating himself, right? Rabbin nas, Malikin nas, Ilahin nas. Why not just say Rabb, Malik, Ilahin nas? Right? Just connect all three like you would do in English. Why mention nas over and over again? Inshallah, if Allah gives us tawfiq, we'll mention that tomorrow night as well. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala Ahl Baytihi at-Tayyibin at-Tahirin.